Darkness. That's all I can see. Why am I here? What's my purpose? Who am I? I want to say my name is 067138, but deep down, I feel as if there's more to my identity than just 6 numbers. It's weird and alien to my mind, as if there's some sort of wall or obstacle that's guarding what I need to know. All of my memories, my old life. I can see a picture in my mind of my old life, but 2 figures are blanked out. Who were these ponies, and what purpose did they serve to me? I try so hard to remember it all, but it's as if the wall I mentioned is made of concrete. I can't break through, and if I tried, my hooves would either end up a bloody and broken mess, or I'd fall asleep again. I don't want to fall asleep. I want the ache in my head to stop. I want to see the light that's missing in this place composed of a heaviness that feels like it's crushing my body at a very slow pace. I want to feel something, for my heart to circulate warm blood to cease the endless cold, for radiant light to shine down on me, and for the dreadful atmosphere permeating my soul to be extinguished by happiness. I don't even have a voice in this place. I can't talk. I can't laugh. I can't even scream for help. All I have are these thoughts. Hopeless fragments of my remaining sanity that are clouded by something I can't see or recollect. How did I get here? What did I do to deserve this? Why doesn't some pony come save me? Was I ever loved by any pony? Did any pony care about my existence? All questions I can't find the answer to. A reoccurring phenomenon that seems to repeat every day I'm here. How long has it been since I last awoke? It feels like eternity, but I know it hasn't been. The darkness just makes it seem that way. Because it's all I see in this wavering sea of tranquil madness. It's dreadful, but also peaceful. As if something was making this place just bearable enough for me to feel comfortable. Is this life after death? Limbo? Somewhere in between both? More questions with no answers. Why do I even bother trying to figure out hopeless things that I can't even begin to understand? Why do I even bother living a life anymore? Is this the life I've always wanted? A life of silence and hollow existence? More questions, no answers. I close my eyes again in an attempt to escape the void and hopelessness around me. Maybe I should just listen to the darkness and sleep. What's the point in staying awake anyways? To just stare at the same view I receive whenever I sleep anyways? To step even closer to the brink of insanity? To be crushed even more by the strength of the sea of black? I decide to just stop questioning myself in hopes of my pounding headache to just go away. It doesn't. My eyes have been shut for 5 minutes now, and I can feel the claws of slumber beginning to drag me into submission. Another minute passes. Another minute. Another minute. Another. A sound caresses my ear, pulling me out of my slumber's embrace. It's faint, but it's also familiar to my every thought and instinct. Could it have been me slipping in and out of a dream? I decide to test that theory by listening for it to hopefully repeat. The sound meets my ears again, this time more clearly. A scream, a dreadful and painful one. It's familiar, but I can't seem to point it out due to the wall cloaking it along with everything else. It goes off again, And now I know that it's something I needed to find. No sound had come through as clear as this one in all my time here, so I needed to listen and find the source. The only problem is that I can't move a muscle. Or could I? And it was just my mind playing tricks on me. In fact, was this all just an illusion? An agonizing pain suddenly strikes my head like a bolt of lightning. And while the pain is horrid to my every nerve, I realize something within the time of being attacked by the ruthless jolt. Any time I begin to think logically about my predicament, the pain of my aching head escalates. It's as if some pony or something doesn't want me to realize that I have more power over this place than it seemed on basis. With the scream I had heard moments ago on my mind, I now know that I have to try and figure out what this unknown force is keeping from me. Something vital is right in front of me, and I can't let this opportunity escape me. Slowly, I begin to feel the pressure of the void release, and the numbness that had enveloped my body dissipate. I begin to recollect things that I had been searching for. Memories that had been hidden by an invisible wall begin to take full form again. The two ponies of my past are revealed, and I start to remember them. The memories come in waves, like a slideshow playing in rapid succession. Apple. Apple. Apple Bloom! I shout, remembering my old friend's name, following with the second pony as well. Another raging ache attacks me, to which I grunt and grit my teeth, but I power through it. Her name is Sweetie Belle, and those two were my best friends. Another charge hits, but I stand tall as the memories continue to become clear. My years of crusading with Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle, my sessions with Rainbow Dash, my success in passing the test to qualify for the flying exam. However, as soon as I reach that particular memory, things begin to change. I took a failure in order to aid another Pegasus who had broken her wings during her attempt. Me and... Once Orion becomes clear to my mind, everything comes back to me. Orion's death, Rainbow Dash's betrayal, my death, the void, Absentia. My mission and purpose return to me, and upon my realization, I know exactly why I'm here and how I got into this mess. My name isn't a number. My name is Scootaloo, and I'm in the Rainbow Factory to end the horrors of it and the twisted mare who runs it. The darkness immediately shifted, twisting and disappearing, revealing a lit room behind it. It's massive and carries a warmth, as if some pony connected to me had called out and led me here. I look out, catching the image of a face I recognize very well. Orion! I call out as I begin to trot towards the figure, tears escaping my eyes as I approach. However, upon reaching the pony I thought was Orion, all I meet is a door. It's nothing particularly unique or symbolic, just a casual door that you see in any house. I stare at it, saddened by the figure being only a trick of my eyes. However, I quickly calm down in realization of what I've been led here to do. It's time for me to wake up and return to finish what I had started. Destroy Rainbow Dash and her empire of nightmares. My heart pounds every second my hoof gets closer to the knob, knowing that as soon as I walk through, I'd immediately be initiated into a battle against the Overmare. It would be do or die, but I was ready to end it all. Thank you, Orion. I say proudly as I turn the knob, open the door, and stepped back into the void of the Rainbow Factory. I opened my eyes to a place that I didn't recognize, my surroundings being a dashboard of 2 levers and buttons. I was seated, and my head was pounding like a drum, causing me to grunt and rub my head in an attempt to ease the pain. However, my blurry vision and aching skull are immediately forgotten upon the sound of an agonizing scream that made my fur stand up straight. That's when I realized that a long glass window was right in front of me, and the sight outside of it immediately made me sick to my stomach. Absentia was hanging from the arm of a lift by chains, and her back legs were gone. With that, I immediately knew where I was, and exactly what I needed to do. I was in the control room for the Pegasus device, and I was running the mechanical arm that she was connected to. I immediately panicked and lifted her from the entrance of the death machine, hoping I could still save her from an assured horrid fate. However, upon seeing just how much damage had already been done, I connected the dots and began to cry. Blood was pouring from her open wounds, and she was convulsing from the unimaginable pain. She was in shock. I wanted to scream and cry massively, but I knew it was useless. I knew what was best for Absentia, but didn't know if I could do it. I just stared out at her, pounding my hooves on the glass and screaming like a banshee. However, upon looking up, I saw that Absentia was looking at me. Her eyes were full of tears, but she was also smiling. I wasn't sure why, but I had some guesses as to why. In her final moments, she'd be happy. It could be that she was finally going to be freed from this place, or that she knew I had come back to my senses. However, once I saw her mouth move, I could read her lips clearly. "Do it!" She was begging me to free her, and in that moment, I knew that both of my assumptions were true, and that meant that I couldn't fail. As much as I didn't want to push the button to end her life, I knew I couldn't just let her suffer. I wiped my tears and fulfilled her last wish, pushing the button to release her into the blades. It was as if time were slowed down as she fell from the arm into the machine and into Dev's comfort. I couldn't watch, so I turned my head, fell to the floor, and wept, silencing out the horrid sound of her body being grinded to spectra. I'm sorry. I am so sorry, Absentia. It had felt like an eternity by the time I stopped crying, finding my way back up and wiping my swollen eyes free of dried tears. Upon getting up, the door to the control room opened, entering a much too familiar face.
What the hell was that? You were ordered to make that traitor experience pain unlike no other. That was pathetic.
Rainbow Dash yelled, storming towards me. Anger rose up. Grinding her legs to paste was not enough punishment for something I wasn't even aware of? What kind of sick and twisted monster do you have to be to toy with a living being?
Hey, I'm talking to you, 067138. Explain yourself. Explain why you didn't obey orders.
She continued to yell. My rage grew more, my blood boiling and teeth gritted. Whatever.
I'll just have the boss up your dosage to assure that little bitch can't influence you again. For now, get out of my sight, you worthless scum. You'll be getting a visit later.
That was it. She'd insulted me, used me, brainwashed me, killed me, and forced me to do horrible things for too long. I didn't care if it wasn't the right time anymore. I played my ace and attacked. You ignorant, evil bitch! I yelled as I threw my hoofs straight into her face, surprising and throwing her back against the wall. I wasn't little helpless Scootaloo anymore, and I let her know it clearly with that attack. I had thrown everything into her ugly and scarred face, and I made absolutely sure that it was powerful enough to stagger her. She had hit the back wall and bounced off of it, putting her into a very vulnerable position, so I took advantage of it. I trotted over and bucked her so hard on the right side of her body that it made her scream, knocking the wind out of her.
That was for Aurora!
I yelled, bucking again, and this time striking her jaw. I didn't hear a crack, but the hit had been enough to disorient her to where she couldn't recover fast enough for my next strike.
That was for Orion!
I followed up with an uppercut to the underside of her chin, causing blood to start leaking from the right corner of her lips.
That was for me!
Too out of it to fight back, I used every bit of my strength to pick her up and lift her over my head like a trophy.
And this is for Absentia!
I shouted with pride and anger, throwing her through the glass window and all the way to the death machine below. I didn't care if she had broken her back or met the blades in a poetic manner of revenge and karma as I ran from the control room and made my way to the top of the Pegasus device. Upon making it all the way up, the crowd of workers were in absolute shock and fear of what was happening, but I didn't care as I approached Rainbow Dash. She was squirming and attempting to drag herself to the blades in hopes of escaping my wrath. Not on my watch. She muttered little moans of pain and agony as I approached her and grabbed her left back hoof, dragging her away from her only mercy. No, you won't get mercy that easily. Not after all you've done. She was at my mercy now, as I walked around to where I could see her bloodied face clear as day.
Wait!
She spoke through her unadulterated agony. I ignored her and kicked her in the left side of her face. She groaned, coughed, and gritted her imperfect teeth, having lost some from my assault.
Please, listen to me, Scoot.
Another kick. More blood. More coughs from the monster before me. I could tell from the damage of the fall that she didn't have much longer to live, so I used every bit of that time to give her as much pain as I possibly could. I kicked, punched, and abused her without any hint of remorse, up until I knew it was time to end her for good. While it had felt good to just beat her up relentlessly, I knew I had to finish it at some point. Therefore, I started the elimination of Rainbow Dash in a fashion that I felt was retribution for Crystal and several other Pegasi who had met their fate by the blades no more than 5 feet from me. I grabbed and extended Rainbow Dash's left wing towards the blades, allowing the ligament to be the first thing to lead her into the machine. As the wing was just about to make contact, something immediately caused me to stop.
Scootaloo, please stop!
Rainbow Dash had yelled so loud that it had shook my will. I froze. The way she'd spoken wasn't like before in all of my time here. It was different, more like the voice of the mare I'd grown up training with. I wanted to ignore her, but for some reason, my instincts made me stop and listen. I turned back to her, immediately noticing tears in her eyes. Not from her wounds and injuries, but from something else.
Please, Scoots.
She spoke, and upon her addressing me by name, I immediately knew there was something different about her. As much as I didn't want to, I let her wink go, hoping that I hadn't just made a grim mistake.
Thanks, Squirt.
She greeted, causing me to jump. Now I definitely knew this was a different pony entirely. Rainbow Factory Dash had never addressed me as that. Not even when I was brought here all those years ago. I was confused, angry, and lost.
Rainbow Dash?
I muttered in disbelief.
It's been a long time, Scoots. You've gotten so big.
There was no doubt. This was the Dash I knew as Equestria's greatest flyer and assister. But how? But how are you? I lost my words instantly, but Rainbow quickly caught on and began to explain everything.
You must be so confused. So let me explain. It all began right after the day I performed the Sonic Rainbow. After the Wonderbolts departed, I was approached by some Pegasi that asked if I wanted to help produce the next Rainbow. I was curious, so I went with them, and upon finishing the Rainbow, was offered a job to help cover the cost of living in my house. However, it turned out to be a trap, and I was knocked unconscious by the thugs who were my guides. After that, I was taken and given some kind of medication that made me into that monstrous alter ego. I couldn't do anything because they threatened to kill you and my other friends if I said anything. I'm so sorry, Scoots. I wanted to not train you, but they forced me to. I wanted to stop, but I couldn't.
She was crying now, and the cold truth of how Rainbow Factory Dash had come into being had made my own tears form. All this time, my sister had been a victim, just like the other Pegasi who had been led here through false promises. I wiped my tears, now aware of who the real enemy was.
I forgive you, big sister. I now see that you were always a victim and never the villain. All I want to do now is make things right. So please, tell me what I need to do to end this nightmare.
It took a moment, but eventually Rainbow gave me the answer. will you always remember what I told you whenever you wanted to give up on your dreams? Reach for the skies. I answered, those 4 words being a very fond memory that I had never forgotten. That's right. Go to the office on the 3rd floor, and you'll find everything. That's my dying wish for you to accomplish. Go and put an end to all of this. What do you mean, big sister? I asked, doing my best not to cry in realization that I had led her to this point. I don't understand. Just trust me, Scoots. Please, do whatever you can to destroy this place. For me, and all of the Pegasi who died here. I was still unsure, but I trusted her enough to know that I'd be able to find the key to this place's demise. Therefore, I just nodded my head and trusted her intuition. Thank you, Scoots. And know that I'll always be proud of you. Her last breath faded, and Rainbow Dash was finally free of the control of Rainbow Factory Dash. I wanted to cry, but didn't cry or mourn, knowing that's not what she would have wanted. I had a mission to finish. I had to find what Rainbow wanted me to seek in her dying breaths. I needed to go to the 3rd floor and finally uncovered the secrets that this factory had hid away for far too long. Two workers flanked me on my way to the top floor, both of them having witnessed the fall of the Overmare and wanting to help me in my final act in burying the Celestia-forsaken hell for eternity. Their names were Flurry Twist and Lightning Flash, and they carried the same hatred as me for this place, and were willing to assist me in detaining the real puppet master that had been pulling the strings ever since the beginning. We arrived in no time, and after a short walk, found the door to the executive's office. The keypad on the door was something more complex than the other ones throughout the entire factory, having more than just the casual 9-digit interface. This one had letters instead of numbers, and had the entire alphabet as an interface, to which I followed by entering the phrase that my sister had mentioned as the password. Upon finishing, the red light that signaled the door as locked turned green, and upon turning the knob, it opened to a darkened room where only a single light lit the large desk on the far side. However, something told me that this wasn't all the room had to offer, and upon passing the doorway, I was right. In the corner to my right was a wooden chair that looked like some kind of torture device. Straps for the head and all 4 hooves meant to restrain the victim nailed to the arms and legs of the chair. Off to the side of that was a giant pinboard that was layered with hundreds of pictures of young Pegasi, targets for the factory and Pegasus device. I shivered at the sight of the demented display, approaching it and following the pins across the board. From what I was getting out of the pattern, it was clear that the monster of this establishment had eyes on specific Pegasi that they would intentionally fix their test to get into the flying exam, and from there led here. Judging from the selected victims' grades and stats, none of them were not very good at flying and lacked the skill majorly. In other words, they were passing bad flyers for easy spectra. This was their solution to low spectra levels, and it was horrifying to even think of it being a real ploy some pony had come up with. Lightning said it before I did. Holy shit! They were literally picking runs off the litter for easy production. Flory jumped at his words, clearly disturbed. But I knew this wasn't the only thing Dash had wanted me to find. There had to be something else here. Something huge. While this is a massive discovery, I doubt that's everything this place has to hide. Keep searching, but be sure to watch your backs. They both nodded and turned in the opposite direction of the room to search further. I decided to start by searching the desk, seeing it was where a variety of bloody deals and schemes had been arranged. I pulled out every drawer and searched their contents very thoroughly, the majority of the clutter being paperwork, diagrams, and a variety of pens and pencils. Nothing particularly relevant to my goal, and up until I had finished rummaging through the clutter had I realized exactly why my search had ended in failure. Things meant to never be revealed to the public were usually kept hidden away in things such as safes or hidden compartments. Upon realizing the flaw in my actions, I began to search again, but this time, I fixed my focus on a different target: a key. However, to my disappointment, no such thing met my sight after sifting through the mess of papers and casual things you'd find in any office space. That's when I realized that this was going to be harder than I had originally anticipated, and completely abandoned the mess at my hooves. Flory and Lightning had the other side of the room covered, so I decided to see if I could find any entrance to a hidden room. There had to be more to this room than what we could see, so I walked to the left wall and planted my right ear to it. If the wall was hollow, I'd be able to hear through, meaning my guess of a secret room would be proven true. Immediately, a sound of a very subtle and muffled cry grazed my eardrum. I was right, but the question was, how do I open the wall? I didn't have to think for long, Lightning answering the solution to the matter quickly. "Hey, guys, take a look at this," he called from about 10 feet behind me. I quickly turned and walked to his position, a grand pony clock just in front of him and open. Upon eyeing the inside of the clock's chamber, I saw a clear hole big enough for a grown pony to crawl through. On the opposite end, I could hear the same muffled sound that I'd heard just a moment before, meaning we'd found the way into whatever hell was intentionally hidden away. "Good work, Lightning," I assured, as I moved toward the secret passageway without fear or worry of what could be on the opposite side. "I'll take point and let you two know if it's safe to go." Neither of them argued, likely scared out of their wits of whatever secrets they were about to discover. I wasn't afraid, knowing that whatever was on the other side was what Rainbow Dash had wanted me to find in her last moments. Therefore, I moved into the passage and carefully crawled through to the other side, making sure to stay cautious the entire way. Upon reaching the opposite end, I heard something aside from the muffled crying. Whistling. That assured me that there were 2 occupants ahead, and judging from the differences of their demeanor, I knew that the one whistling was hostile. With that in mind, I knew I had to be careful, so I proceeded forward as quietly as I could manage. Upon meeting the other side, I was met with a sight that made my blood freeze. The room was the same diameter of the office, with only a single light illuminating the wide space. However, that wasn't the chilling aspect. Across the room, a pony was restrained to a wooden chair very similar to the one in the office, and off to the side was a tray of several tools made of metal. Off to the side, prepping themselves for whatever horrible procedure was about to happen, was a very familiar face that I had encountered upon my first arrival to the factory for the first time. Dr. Atmosphere. His blood-red fur and white lab coat were a dead giveaway as I watched him grab something out of my line of sight and approach the seated and muzzled Pegasus.
Are you comfortable?
He asked his victim in the same voice and tone as I remembered. The mare continued to cry in her despair, trying her hardest to break free.
You don't deserve comfort after your pathetic performance. You're an embarrassment to all of Cloudsdale, dear. But don't fret, because your failure will make up for hard labor. Now allow me to put you to sleep for a while. Don't worry. When you wake, you will be a brand new pony with one purpose: to obey the great Overmare and question nothing else.
He held up a syringe, and upon seeing it, I knew what it meant. I didn't know what he planned to do to her, but it couldn't be anything good, so I took action. I shimmied out of the hole and worked quick to stop the mad doctor from further progression in his tactics. "Drop the syringe, now!" I yelled, catching his attention instantly and making him freeze. However, his response was as calm as usual, responding first with a chuckle.
And what is a rat doing out of its cage? Have the effects worn off and you have managed to wander somewhere you shouldn't be? I'd suggest you wander off elsewhere.
Don't talk to me as if I'm a test subject, you monster. I simply came to my senses from whatever the hell you did to me.
How interesting. Ah, experiment 067138. It's been a while, hasn't it? You certainly are a special case indeed. A pony I swore was eliminated by our beautiful machine, yet stands before me all these years later, as if nothing ever happened. You certainly were the first subject to ever come close to escaping, but eventually was caught in the trap and tossed into the garbage. I must give you credit for your incredible resilience and ambition. But just as it happened all those years back, you'll never escape this place. Not as long as we have control over you.
It was infuriating to listen to him speak so nonchalantly, as if I were still chained above the maw of the Pegasus device, but I refused to let him win and dashed his confidence in retort. You have no control. The Overmare is dead, and this factory is finished. He only chuckled again, catching me off guard.
Child, it doesn't matter if the Overmare is dead or not. You see, our grip on Rainbow Production goes beyond this establishment.
He paused, starting to pace over to where he originally had been upon my arrival.
Allow me to tell you a story. There was once a grand Pegasus that could fly so fast that he could break the barriers of sound and speed itself. One day, said Pegasus decided to try going beyond the limits of both, and, in doing it, created the phenomenon known as the Sonic Rainboom. This event caused a massive explosion of a spectrum of colors, catching the eyes of many, and leading to those many wanting to recreate what he had performed. They had worked and tested several methods to create an artificial sonic rainbow, but always ended up falling short in terms of stabilization. Then came the day that everything came full circle, and the answer to stabilizing the experiment was founded. During a test of attempting to convert colors of objects into a liquid form, a worker in the experiment accidentally fell into the very machine that was designed to extract pigment from the target. A terrible tragedy, but out of it came a perfectly stable recreation of what that Pegasus had made. On the close of a storm that day, ponies looked up to the sky and witnessed the very first rainbow to ever exist, but knew not the process of how it had been made. Even the princesses had seen it themselves, and given how ponies had reacted to its presence on the eve of a storm, had made it a tradition for a rainbow to grace the skies after every downpour had passed. That accident is the very thing that led to the production of rainbows. And in all the time since that day, every single one you've ever laid eyes upon was made through the same method as now.
I wanted to throw up. Could this really be the true story of how rainbows were discovered and made? If that were true, then the machine that had killed that Pegasus on accident was... The dots connected instantly, and I could feel goosebumps rising on my skin at the horrid truth of how this whole nightmare had started.
The truth is quite appalling, isn't it? Now you know, child. There was never any more way to make rainbows. It has always been done the same way as it started. Even if you were to somehow expose the process to the princesses, do you seriously think they'd stop what they declared as a tradition?
He really was insane. The mere thought of the princesses allowing this genocide to continue just because they had said it as a traditional occurrence was baffling. I know they would. Tradition or not, if they knew how this all began, the Pegasus device would have been terminated instantly. Unlike you creeps that have no love for anything except your pathetic selves, Celestia and Luna would never lead their beloved subjects to slaughter. Dr. Atmosphere only chuckled under his breath, somehow thinking that the rulers of Equestria would allow Pegasi to be treated like farm animals that were only fed to be killed for their meat. There was no swaying a pony who had already lost his mind and become a monster that lived only for murder and profit.
Believe what you wish, Billy, but I know the truth about the cruel reality outside these walls. Now, back to the present. What do you plan to do now that you've killed the Overmare? Are you going to kill me as well? Free the workers here who lost their sanity years ago? Obtain victory by being nothing better than the Overmare or I?
I'm nothing like you, and never will be. Killing you isn't an act out of the purpose of obtaining power or profit. It's a victory in ending the horrors that have remained hidden within these walls for far too long. It's also a declaration of freedom for every soul trapped here, and the workers that you forced into lives of misery and pain. By killing you, they can finally escape their life here and heal from all you've done to them. That is my purpose and promise I made to all of them. To all of the victims that gave me this opportunity to finally end the Rainbow Factory for good.
You're wasting your time. Think about it. Releasing these weaklings is like releasing patients of an entire mental ward out into the world without any sort of control. Their grip on reality has been severed over the years of being forced to contribute the purpose of this factory's existence. They've lost their way and can't see past anything except their life in this place.
I gritted my teeth in anger, but kept myself still as I countered his words. You're wrong. I've been here long enough to see the pain and grief hidden behind their fear of being killed if they even make one small mistake. Absentia was one of them, and she had been here for 20 years. She remembered pieces of her past that you bastards forced her to forget by shoving that medication down her throat. Dr. Atmosphere jumped at the mention of the practical poison, his smile slowly beginning to collapse into an unsure expression. I capitalized upon the clear opening that he'd given me to shake his core to nothing but dust. Surprised? You expected me to remember nothing about what you used to lock me away for Celestia knows how long, didn't you? Well, I've got news for you. There's too many Pegasi that are counting on and supporting me to finish the very thing you started. Does the name Crystal ring any bells? How about Orion or Aurora? The Pegasi you and the Overmare you forced my sister to become killed out of nothing but selfishness and desperation. I, along with every worker and past victim, remember everything. Our pasts and the futures that you and the Overmare took away. We are not zombies or puppets that you control through fear anymore. Everything you tried to use to make us into nothing but lifeless shells failed. And now, it's our turn to deliver you the very pain that you did to us.
Whether or not you were able to figure out what kept every one of those dogs leashed and disciplined doesn't matter to me. You talk big, runt. But how do you plan to kill me? You know well that I am able to submit you in more than one way, and with as many years as I have in this factory. You should know full well that you are outclassed in both experience and agility. I don't need the Overmare to beat a filly who doesn't know how to stay dead. I will finish you just as you were all those years ago. Therefore, I invite you to take your best shot. But after you fail to bring me down, I'll be sure to strike back in a way that will assure that you are put back to sleep. And this time, I'll make sure whatever fragment of you remains stays dead.
It was a trap, and I knew he was just trying to egg me into an inescapable strike. I didn't bite, and instead responded with something that even he couldn't have predicted.
Lightning! Flurry! Come on through!
I called, to which the mad pony flinched and froze. Before long, my two companions successfully wiggled through the tight space and were at my side. Upon seeing Dr. Atmosphere, they shivered in fright, up until I reassured them that he wasn't anything they needed to fear. He was outnumbered now, and his confidence that he could easily submit me had dwindled. You two have nothing to fear. It's 3-1, and he knows he can't take all of us. As long as you show him that you aren't afraid, he will no longer be able to control you. Flurry and Lightning heard me clear and knew I was right, both of them smiling proudly and nodding in agreement. Their gazes then turned to the monster before them, eyeing him with confidence and anger. Dr. Atmosphere's lips slowly curved into a deranged smile that made him look even more unhinged than he already was. Following that, he slowly began to laugh in a way that didn't seem confident or evil, but more like a surrender. His laughter started slowly, then gradually built up to the point where every intimidating feature of his being began to disappear. He was more like a cult who had not gotten something they had wanted for their birthday, and it was actually quite disturbing to watch. In his descent into absolute madness, Lightning and Flurry had taken the initiative to release the mare bound to the chair, while I just watched as the real monster behind this macabre facility accepted his defeat and continued to delve deeper into his sea of insanity. Once the mare was free of her binds, she didn't waste any time and walked over to my current position and began to serve the scientist justice. She punched his left cheek so hard enough to knock him to the floor, and in absolute anger and rage, dealt him a cold serving of revenge, pounding her hooves down onto his head. After the first punch, his unhinged laughter was still hearable, but after the second, his laughter turned into the sound of crackling and gurgling. The third hit produced the sound of blood splatter, and a gushing sound when her hooves made contact with his brain matter, now littered on the floor. Every hit following produced the same gory and slushy noise up until she finally stopped after the 10th stomp. No pony had attempted to stop her, because we all wanted to do the same thing. However, given her situation prior to my interference, Flurry, Lightning, and I just let her destroy the monster as she wished, having not said a word or moved an inch the entire time. She breathed heavily and was drenched in her act of revenge, having turned to us and said something we weren't expecting. "I'm sorry, but I had to." Lightning had been the first to speak, to which I was thankful. "You don't need to be. He deserves nothing less than to be stomped on, just like he did to all of us for countless years." She nodded, turning her gaze to me and expressing a look of desperation. "Everything you said, is it actually true?" "Yes. The Overmare is dead." She gasped, and tears began to form in her eyes at the relief of the very pony who had trapped her here could no longer control her. "Then, are we finally free? Can we all finally go home?" She asked in a way similar to a foal being found after being lost in the woods for weeks. I smiled in assurance, nodding my head and giving her an answer that she thought would never have come for the rest of her life. "Yes." She smiled and broke down into a fit of happiness, crying tears of joy and absolute relief. She'd never have to wake within the walls of this prison ever again or have to witness the hordes of Pegasi being grinded to nothing but spectra. Never again would a rainbow manifest upon the closing of a storm. Never again would a Pegasus be ridden of their goals and dreams. Never again would the Pegasus device awaken to devour the innocent. It was over. However, there was still one thing that needed to be done. "Lightning, take her and lead all of the other workers out of the factory. Flurry, I still need you to help me find what you'll need to make sure this place is buried." "Gotcha." Lightning agreed, turning his sights back to the hidden passage that he'd shuffled through to get here. "Let's go." He addressed to the other mare, to which she followed him, leaving Flurry and I to investigate further. Once the coast was clear, Flurry started by asking me a very obvious question that I knew was coming. "What exactly are we looking for, Scoots?" "Evidence of the murders that happened here. Words aren't enough proof, so we'll need something that will give us definite proof of the truth of what happened here." "Ah, I see. So, something like documentation of all of the victims and their death dates." "Exactly. Now, the question is, where would that be?" Flori and I both put a hoof to our chins, thinking about where Dr. Atmosphere would store a collection of documents regarding all of his victims, and was usually occupied by the puppet master of the factory. Another factor was that I don't think Rainbow Dash had just wanted me to find the true monster. It was surely one of the things she'd wanted me to find, but there had to be something else that would really open the truth about this place. Then it hit me. The answer was right in front of me. I approached the remains of Dr. Atmosphere and began to search his lab coat pockets for something that I knew would be there. A key card. Upon checking his inner right pocket, I found it and gripped it in my hoof, reading the text along both sides of the card. While it was dimly lit where I stood, I could make out the text, and upon one glance, I knew where I needed to go to find the truth. Dr. Atmosphere's bunker. What did you find? The key to the truth. Come on, Flori. We're going to room 0, aka this monster's living quarters. Room 0 wasn't easy to find, but luckily, Absentia's advice had finally led me to the key slot of the place Dr. Atmosphere had called his home. There were only 3 specific large pipes that did not connect to the main network of the entire factory's pipe system, and after checking the very one that led deeper into the bowels of the factory, had found another hole in the wall that looked like a result of erosion over the decades of the factory's existence. However, it was also the perfect disguise for a secret passage that housed something forbidden. So after passing through and walking about 150 yards, we came to the door we now stand before. It wasn't any different from Absentia's door, only more hidden away to keep something from the eyes of the public. It was very clear that there was something hidden beyond, so I stuck the key card into the provided slot and awaited to be granted entry. Upon hearing the metal lock shift, I turned the knob and prepared myself for whatever was to come. Once the door was fully open, a light flashed on within, revealing a massive room full of file cabinets that were alphabetically sorted. Jackpot. There was no doubt that this was the place we needed to find and expose. Flori and I remained silent as we entered the large room of nothing but metal cabinets that held all the secrets that were needed to destroy this place for good. The question was, where do we even start? However, I was answered as I moved deeper into the room and came across a file cabinet that was labeled Resources. This cabinet had caught my attention the most, and I didn't know why. All I knew was that I needed to investigate this cabinet, so I did, grabbing the handle and pulling out the contents. Upon seeing the guts of the case, I knew my instincts were correct to open this container first. Inside, all I saw was red. A red hue that had been from the several packaged crimson pills that were neatly sorted in rows. I recognized the sight instantly as the poison that Dr. Atmosphere had used as a suppressant and controller for the Pegasi who were initiated by Rainbow Factory Dash. However, upon a second glance, I noticed something that disturbed me to no avail. There were names at the top of each of the slabs that harbored the packaged supplement. The names of those who were forced to take it and forget their families, dreams, and pasts. It was disgusting to look at, but it was a piece of what was needed to fix those still affected by the venomous medication. Flori had caught sight of me, and upon her meeting my position, had matched my expression.
Celestia above,
she whispered in shock and horror.
I remember that fucking red pill. I'd be aware, then I'd vanish into just black. It wasn't until I woke up with that headache
that I escaped and just pretended to take it and acted like a zombie to survive. Her description matched the same exact experience that I had had while being forced to become some pony against my will. I'd been conscious for a minute, but then I'd lose memory of what I was doing and just get swallowed up by nothing but darkness. However, her comment about the headache had confused me, but that was besides the point, so I came out of my thoughts and addressed the situation. I know how you feel, and this is one piece of what we need to prove this factory's true purpose. All we need now is documentation of all of the murders, so let's keep looking. Flurry nodded, shaking off her initial emotions and focusing on the clear objective. I closed the cabinet and continued to search, moving to another cabinet right next to the current one. This one especially caught my attention, the label reading Special Subjects. This was it. While I hadn't looked yet, I knew this was where the thing lied that Dash had wanted me to find. Opening the drawer to the cabinet, I was met with an estimated amount of 50 files, all neatly organized in alphabetical order. However, I knew which one I was looking for immediately upon seeing one lone file under R. It was my sister's folder. I didn't know what I was supposed to find, but I knew it would be obvious once I saw it. I grabbed the folder and pulled it from its confined space, flipping it open and seeing the horrors of the process and creation of the Overmare.
Subject name: Rainbow Dash. Gender: female. Age: 26. Experiment A. Patient was captured and submitted by the use of taser, to which she quickly lost her consciousness and was taken to the conversion chamber. Conversion started with an injection of a liquefied version of the main medication used to control and make all subjects forget about their pasts and families. Injection was a success, the patient having reacted in a very negative manner, having screamed and cried upon the liquid meeting her bloodstream. The injection process lasted for a total of 10 minutes. And, in that time, the patient never once stopped exerting exclamations of pain. Whether or not the effects of the medication were successful remains to be determined, and we will check back in the morning to check if we were successful. Analysis A. After analyzing the patient, I can concur that the injection process was successful, but she will need further observation to determine how much influence the medicine has over her psyche. This will take several days, so I will continue to administer the serum in low doses over the next 72 hours to avoid causing her mental stress of fatal levels. Analysis B. After 72 hours, the patient has suffered mental trauma and continues to sweat massively. Patient claims to be experiencing severe hot flashes and episodes of her complaining that acid is flowing through her veins. I suspect this is nothing and will continue to monitor her for any abnormal occurrences. Analysis C. It has now been 168 hours since the injection of the serum. In the time since the previous entry, patient has become physically weak and unresponsive. Nothing to worry about. This is all part of the conversion process, and soon her current self will cease to exist. Analysis D. It is now day 9, and I can confirm that my patient is ready for the next step of the conversion process. I will administer the catalyst of her activation and wait for the process to naturally take its course. Experiment 1A. The catalyst calcidium has been administered, and, as per usual, the heart rate is slowing to the fatal rates. This occurs that the second step of the conversion process was successful, and it is now safe to administer the last serum to complete the process. Experiment A2. The heart flatlined 1 minute prior to the documentation, leading me to administer the last step of the process. I have begun the vaccination of Kaladin, the second catalyst that will react to the main substance and cause a restart of the heart, usually taking around 5 seconds to fully process. Conclusion. In final, Rainbow Dash's conversion process was a success, but I will be keeping an eye on her for a week to be absolutely sure that nothing remains of her previous self. I will continue to administer the capsule version of the main agent to assure I remain in full control. Shall any abnormal events occur in the time she is under my control, I will perform the necessary procedures to assure my experiments remain successful.
I lost it. Tears escaped my eyes at the horror story that I had just read. Rainbow Dash had been tortured and slowly killed against her will with no hope of escape or mercy. And yet, I had somehow reawoken her true self from deep within. How had I done it? I could only assume it was fate intervening in an unlawful and truly horrifying situation that had resulted in nothing but pain, anger, and murder. That didn't matter now, though. She was dead and free, and the monster who had caused it all was burning in Tartarus. All that mattered now was the truth, and burying the horrors along with the factory. I went to close the folder up until I noticed something out of place. A lined paper that looked like it had been hidden behind the main contents for a reason. I flipped the paper over, and upon seeing the hoof writing, I knew I had found what my sister had wanted me to find. Her proof that she wasn't the one who murdered all of those Pegasi.
To whoever finds this, I'm writing this to you as a last stand for myself. My name is Rainbow Dash, and I am not a murderer. I have been kidnapped and am slowly in the process of dying as I write this, and want the pony who finds this to know the truth. The weather factory is a death trap for Pegasi, and rainbows are what those victims become after being harvested through a machine that ciphers their pigment to make the spectra that's used to produce rainbows. I managed to wriggle out of my binds long enough to write this final testimony. The damage is already done, and I'm already starting to slowly lose my memories, forget my name, and lose hope of any pony miraculously coming to save me. Therefore, to whoever reads this, please take this letter to the princesses as evidence of my remaining existence. They must know the truth and end this madness before it's too late, and innocent Pegasi become victims of a horrible way to die. Rainbows were never beautiful and were the beginning of a bloody production line. So please, if Princess Celestia or Luna are reading this, as my last wish and will, protect the Pegasi of Cloudsdale. Destroy the Weather Factory's secret business of murdering Pegasi. Rainbow Dash.
This was the answer to ending the factory, and now it was time to fulfill my sister's last wish.
Flurry, come here.
I called, being met by said Pegasus not long after.
What is it, Scoots?
She asked me, but before I opened my mouth to reply again, something became clear to me. I didn't even need to test to see if it was true. I couldn't be the one to deliver the truth, because I was still dead and trapped in the factory.
Scoots, are you okay?
She spoke to me again in a worried tone. I didn't even hear her, and instead spoke what I needed to say before I would go back to the void again. Listen to me. I started, closing the file and handing it to her. I need you to take this to Canterlot and show this to the princesses. It's all you'll need to prove everything about this place. She took the file and held it tightly, but upon lowering my hoof back to the floor, she questioned me further.
I will, but we're going to do it together, right? Scoots, you're scaring me.
I wanted to say the truth, but knew I couldn't. I could feel myself beginning to get lighter, and upon looking around, I could see something that made me smile. Just behind Flurry was Crystal, Absentia, and my sister smiling in a proud display. I was frozen in place, but I could feel warmth fluttering inside of me, knowing that, while it hadn't gone how I'd expected, my mission was accomplished. I no longer had anything to do here. I'm sorry, Flurry, but I can't leave here. Don't worry though, your nightmare is over. So as a last request, do what I can't and take this evidence to the princesses. She was beyond confused, but there wasn't much I could do. I just gave her my last wish as I began to feel as if I were floating.
Wait, what do you...
She stopped and just stared at me, and at that moment, I knew that she knew that I wasn't lying and had to be the one to finish the job. I just smiled as I saw Rainbow Dash say one lone thing from across the room.
It's okay, Scoots. Come home.
So I did, and with only a smile on my face, walked forth past Flurry. She didn't move and just stood completely still as I rounded the corner and returned back to my family and friends. My work was done. Flurry had to be the one to take the next step, and as I met up with all of the ponies I cared for in this place, I was surprised. The void was no longer cold or felt unwelcoming. It was warm and comfortable, like you'd imagine life after death should be. Then, off in the distance, a bright light graced the darkness, tearing through the endless black like a knife and growing with every passing second. It was blinding, but I knew that this radiant light was the next place for all of the victims to finally pass on to. They were finally free of the shackles of the factory, no longer bound and trapped in purgatory. It was finally time to go home. Absentia and my sister touched my shoulders, smiling brightly at me in the moment we all had been waiting for so long.
Ready to go, Scoots?
Rainbow Dash asked me, to which I smiled and nodded my head. Yeah, I think we all are. With no other words, I held my smile as Absentia, Rainbow, and I walked forward into the next step in our life beyond death. Upon passing the light and feeling a warmth envelop my body, I finally cried tears of happiness that I had wished to shed many years ago. I'm finally home. I'm free, at long last.